actually seeing this stuff come together.
Jesse put a nail right through his hand.
Welcome to Model Rail Radio. I'm Tom Barbalet, and this is being recorded live on Skype, June 17th, 2017. Model Rail Radio is the internet's only live recorded radio show where the topic is the hobby of model railroading. We have on Jim Lincoln, we're already talking about legal opiates, we'll move on from that. A wide variety of folk, including Jim Gifford. But I wanted to start with a gentleman who's known in the model rail circles now as Bambi, Rob Grutzer.
Hey.
You said that you had some new information. You said that the hobby is changing for you. With this kind of hype, what is your model railroading update?
Well, the big M layout's coming down. Last time I called you guys, you talked to me about possibly talking to the ops guys in Credit Valley Fremont. Basically the sources around me, so I did get together with them. Since then, I've got to go to many layouts. I joined the Fremo group, and I really got into Trevor Marshall's layout. We met, and he had me over. I saw his S-scale layout, and at the same time, I picked up a book by an author named Ian Wilson. He does these books called Steam At, and it's local branch line stuff all over Ontario and Southern Ontario with CN, which is what I'm modeling, and it's just fascinating. You can literally open a book, pick a page, and he has everything prototypically done, from a scale track plan of every branch line and city on that to what industries were served,
Hey, Shadow Wolf.
equipment did what. So after reading these books, seeing Trevor's layouts, learning about operations, and at the same time, my N-scale layout was just getting out of hand. It was becoming spaghetti. There was too much. I was not being able to detail as much as I like, and I figured that since I like the proto stuff, I like operations, and I like to do like hyper detail work, let's get out of the crazy basement layout. Let's make everything smaller, take what I've learned, and I bought a 280 Spectrum used at Credit Valley, and then I posted a bunch of pictures there on Model Rail Radio, but I basically used that as my first scratch build, tore it down to nothing, used the pictures in the book, and now I've just finished it. So my plan is to, I have the van or the caboose for it, and just have a 5-6 car, extremely prototypically accurate set, which I can then take to the Fremo groups, run until I get mine up and going, and then possibly have a very small little switching type layout.
Interesting.
Yes.
Trevor Marshall will do that to people, I hear.
He has that effect, and then since then he's in my travels. As you know, I travel a lot for a living. He's introduced me to other folks around the hobby, and in Ottawa I just had my first G-scale garden rail operating session, which was absolutely phenomenal, and what a cool group that was. I posted some pictures there to the site as well. I'd never seen something that large.
It's a dangerous thing, knowing a lot of people in this hobby, so stick with your guns for as long as possible, I think. That's the only advice I can give. It could get very costly, although, yeah.
That's exactly why I decided, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm sticking now with the HO branch line. It's what I really like. It's like a little time machine. It has steam ops, and it has my, I can model it like I would do, planes and robots and ships from before.
Very good. Very good. I can't understand how someone could live in your part of the world and not be aware of the resources that are available to you. But now I've made these resources available to you. What is actually going to happen with your N-scale layout? Are you cutting it up, or what are you doing with it?
Interestingly enough, through Facebook and the wonderful world of the day we live in, I just saw on the Canadian Modelers Facebook group, that a guy who I was, sharing N-scale advice with, he purchased my train set that I put up for consignment. So it's in good hands. And what I plan to do is I may keep the sound-equipped DCC loco that I have and have a very little, maybe tiny, almost diorama type thing. The bench work is probably going to go. The track, if I can sell it or give it to somebody, great. And the rolling stock, I'm consigned selling and stuff for, just to, and take that money and put it back into, let's say, the HO stuff to still have a cost control sort of thing to it.
Certainly.
It's nice to see people like your stuff that you sell too, which is kind of neat. It was neat to see it today.
Definitely. So when you initially described it, I wasn't sure whether you were going with HO or ON30, because the locomotive that you described is available in both, I believe. So interesting. So HO, smaller. What kind of stuff are you going to be modelling with this new layout?
Are you familiar with any? I know you've been to Toronto before, but north of Toronto there is a couple of main lines which spurred out into various branch lines that were around in the 50s, pretty much just like the States pre-highway stuff. So what I'm going to do for now, the big plan is have the prototypical couple stock cars, couple tank cars, couple box cars, and really work on that. Once that's done, I would like to build a Fremo module of the town I live in. It really works because there's no curves, it's quite straight. And then give it a lot of time and thought, really research all these different end-of-the-line stations that were plentiful in this area in the 50s. Kind of, if you've seen Trevor's layout, you'll notice that his layout, it ends with a little turntable, which would be the size of a 280 or a loco of that size, and they would do their work and they would spin they would turn the locomotive on the little turntable, and then the crew would just do their branch line pickups and setouts and head back to whatever main division point they came from. One of those, and a lot of them have the Great Lakes involved too. So you got train meeting barges and boats. I just need something that works in the basement for me that I won't get bored of, and if that takes me 3 years to figure out, so be it. That's what the Fremo group's for.
Fascinating. Trying to think, I was thinking it was David Karkowski started modelling that area for a period of time. Yeah, no, visually, my travels to Toronto, I can't remember whether it was 1 day or 2 days, but travelling up by train from, I think, probably Michigan. Must have been Michigan. And yeah, the transition and the whole area, I mean, I was very visually struck by the crossing through the border and how things changed dramatically on the Canadian side. So
yeah. These books, if you ever get a chance, or if I ever run into you one day, these books are just insanely well done. I mean, this guy, you literally pick a layout and go. I mean, everything you need for a prototypical operation of a town, it's right there to scale. And it's fascinating that, he did that all over Ontario. So it was a huge help to me.
You may recall a gentleman by the name of Chris Abbott, who really started off this podcast in a splendid fashion and has disappeared into the realm of Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, Dungeons and Dragons, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, he was an acolyte for Trevor Marshall in terms of general knowledge, but also, as you say, these books, which are just amazing. And in terms of knowing the authors, knowing the people that were putting out these works of history associated with minute branch lines and all this kind of fascinating stuff, there is a strong network in your part of the world. Yes.
Yeah, it's great, but, here's to the podcast, because if it wasn't for, like I say, the podcast and all that, I wouldn't have known any of it, even though it was 5 feet away from me,
Astonishing. You know the way we do things here, Bambi. You know the way things are done on Model Rail Radio. So please stay on the line. If anything comes up, you know what to do, and you try to hold out for 3 months in HO before you go to G. Just try.
Well, the interesting thing there, I won't take up too much more of your time. 2 things. One thing I've learned, which is kind of neat with the G-Scale guys, is they all tend to own their own locomotive, and they have it all battery packed and ready to go. And then when they show up to these places, the rolling stock is sort of there, almost like a big RPG sort of game. But they take their locos home. So the only investment a lot of these guys made was the loco. But yeah, I'm not going to be doing that anytime soon. But I will never say never. Yeah, and then yeah, that's about it.
Always a pleasure chatting with you on Model Rail Radio, and I'm always a fan of your Facebook updates as well. I don't know, I live vicariously associated with your particular profession, so Catch Me If You Can is a favourite film of mine, and I think one day maybe I'll just take up impersonation or something like that.
That's awesome. Actually, yeah, no worries.
Talk to you soon, Robbie. Take care.
Take care.
I'd like to welcome back on Jim Lincoln. You have been out of the hobby for, has it been 6 months, 8 months? And then mysteriously, the proto bug bit you, and you started doing some detailing again. What's been going on with your model railroading hobby?
Oh, boy. Yeah, all of a sudden I decided, yeah, the computer games, enough was enough, and I just stopped. And so I pulled out I started work on the Proto 48 module / layout that I was working on, and I can't work on that because of the operation, so I've been building structures and detailing. Basically what it came down to was I stopped overthinking things, and I said, you know what, I'll just do this. You know, I'll just paint it. You know, instead of worrying about how I'm going to dent up how I really want to dent it up, and I don't know how to do the rusting effect that I want, and I don't know how to. I was like, you know what, just paint it. Just paint it. Just do something. Do something. No one else is gonna know. You're the only one that's gonna know. So, and so I've just been trying a bunch of stuff. First time I did chipping, armor modeling and stuff like
certainly. That. I thought you were a chipping. I would have imagined you were a chipping master.
No. I did other effects, but I had never done it. It's ferociously simple, but no, I had never done it. So just did it today, as a matter of fact.
Very cool. So convalescing, we talk periodically with people that have had surgeries and are convalescing. Model railroading is a great hobby for convalescing.
Oh yeah, because I don't have to get up and do anything. As long as you have everything. I'm very fortunate is that the desk that I'm sitting at right now, where my computer is, has a glass top. So you can use you can use an X-Acto blade right on it. Don't have to worry about it. Okay, it's going to dull the blade, but that's why you have lots of them. So, and it's been working out really great. But that I'm finishing what I'm working on right now is finishing up that gondola that I had 3D printed the ends and cut off the ends, and the saga of the Lionel gondola is actually being finished. That was the thing that I said I was so afraid of destroying it by denting it up that I was like, you know what? No one's really gonna know. I'll see if I can make the same effect with paint, and I'll just paint it, get it done, letter it up, and it's coming along. Looks pretty good, I think. And to get my denting fix out, I built one of the 3 BTS kits that I have, and so that's mostly built. But I've been concentrating on this and my fanciful structure. That's a joke that comes from the name of it is a joke that comes from your sister podcast.
My sister podcast, yes.
Yeah.
That's an amazing podcast. I've got to say, I was thinking of actually doing some oration associated with Lionel Strang and his creation. It's more than a creation now. It's an army, darn it. It's an army of folk. Yeah, no, I my view is this is the power of podcasting, ladies and gentlemen. It can become things even greater than its origins. It is amazing to see the stuff that Lionel's done. And you are such a central part of the mythology. Well, you are of Model Rail Radio as well, but I mean, your AML network mythology.
Yes.
Are you getting royalty checks associated with this thing?
No, I have to pay him, right?
Oh,
I have to.
my goodness.
I'm the sponsor. I'm the sponsor. I'm supposed to pay him.
I thought
That's
they
the
were
amazing
paying to use your name. Oh, I got it the wrong way around. I'm sorry.
Yes, no. Jim Lincoln Shovels. I've got the shirt and everything.
Okay.
But yeah, that whole thing, it's kind of funny. I'm on every podcast without actually being on them. It's kind of funny. I love that. I love the goal horn. It makes me laugh every time I hear it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. You may find this a couple of interesting notes about my brother. I have an older brother. He's 8 years older than myself, and he has just come into. He started liking trains again. So yeah, it was kind of because of his train set way back when that I got into model railroading. He had a Lionel train set. And I think I've told that story, but when he and his wife got married, they ended up having to sell it because they didn't have any room and they needed money and all this other stuff. And so the kid, my niece has moved out and all this other stuff. He's, kind of doing this, doing that. And his wife said, well, why don't you always like trains. Why don't you get the Lionel train set again? And so he's seriously into Lionel. And so he likes the setup. And he says, I understand what you do, Jim, but, I like to set the track up on the floor and play with the kids. Spend 3 or 4 hours with the kids running the trains around a million miles an hour. But he said, when you would buy your trains, I would never understand. He says, why is he buying all these trains? It doesn't make any sense. He's got so many. Why does he buy more? And now that I have them, it's a disease, Jim. It's like you look at this. It's like, oh, I need this one. Why do you need it? Because it's blue. I don't have that one. And what I found is when I was able to go to Springfield with my brother.
Oh, that's cool.
And yeah, he had never gone to Springfield. He didn't know what it was, and he met Craig Biscayr and some various other people. And we were walking around, and it was nice because now, okay, I'm Proto 48. I do all this stuff, but he does 3-rail, and so now it allows me to, hey, that looks cool. Now, I'm not going to run it on my railroad, but my brother can use it.
Model railroading, bringing the Lincolns back together again. This is family therapy and many other different levels. And it's actually quite beautiful that your brother can see you not only as obviously his brother, but also as Jim Lincoln, model railroader extraordinaire. People still refer to you as the traveling turnout priest as well, which is the moniker I kicked off.
I heard that reference recently on one of the episodes. I've been listening through episodes, trying to catch up with a bunch of stuff. So one of the things we found at the show, now you may understand what this is, your wife being a Disneyphile. As we're walking through the show, I had just come from Disney, so a gentleman was selling a very nice MTH bobber caboose and lettered for the Carolwood Pacific. Do you know what that is?
Is it the Singing Grizzlies or something?
No. The Carolwood Pacific. That was Walt Disney's personal model railroad at his house. Certainly.
I've got the book actually at arm's length away. So yes.
So it was one of these, oh my God, do you have any idea what that is? And I'm going to spend whatever amount of money that costs. And it was only $70, which was quite nice.
Yeah.
So it's not if you're a Disney-phile, you know what it is. But if it's not over the top Disney, like a lot of Disney stuff is. And so
actually, muted Disney, I think, is very much. I'm very much muted Disney. Well, except for It's a Small World. But aside from that, my perspective is actually muted Disney. I think is just as valid a form of Disney as completely over the top Disney. So yes.
And so what I'm going to do on this traveling Proto 48 layout is I bought one of these cabooses for my brother.
Cool.
I said, I want you to have this, and I want you to give it to your wife because your wife is really into Disney too. So, and he went home. He called the guy back, and he sent me one in the mail. So I have one too.
Very cool.
And I've Proto 48'd it. So, because my brother said, do it. I said, all right. So what I've decided to do, I just won I recently won a eBay auction for an unlettered Proto 48 locomotive. And I believe that I'm going to have that lettered for Carrowood Pacific. So that will be the railroad that kind of runs things on that little railroad. So it's actually going to be an homage to Walt Disney and the Carrowood Pacific. Walt Disney was really into the older, like Civil War type motives.
Yes, definitely.
And that's not really my thing. But this is it's a 50-ton GE diesel, so very diminutive. Southern Pacific had one, and it was narrow gauge. And so I just thought that, that's one of the things I'm going to be doing. So people think, oh, Jim's what is the word?
Prototype rivet counter? I don't know. They're the things I can say on this podcast. I mean,
proto-Nazi.
Yeah.
And sort of. But this way I get it. I can make it realistic, but that doesn't mean the station is. I mean, I think you saw it. I made a New Haven station sign that says Bitten Limb, Rhode Island, and with Bitten Limb BL variety. Mm-hmm. Because of the old joke that happened on, I think, a viewer mail about Rhode Island. There's a law in Rhode Island that says you can't bite off somebody's leg. And you can bite off somebody's arm, but you can't bite off. It's against the law to bite off someone's leg in the state of Rhode Island.
Rhode Island is a very... I'm listening to a podcast which is just finished called Crime Town, which is about the kind of mafioso underpinnings of Rhode Island.
And
it's a very interesting... Yeah, I don't know. I've never really understood Rhode Island, but I understand that those that do it excessively. But I'm a little bit Rhode Island out, if such a thing would exist. Apologies to listeners in Rhode Island. I will take your calls. But yeah, the mythology of Rhode Island, I think, is... I don't know. I'm just like, I'm done with it already. I've got mafioso gangster types that live in my neighborhood. I want podcasts on them, darn it. Anyway, Jim Lincoln.
I know. Yeah, it's just... Sadly, I live 5 minutes away from the border.
Yes.
So I can't really escape it.
Yes.
Sadly. I thought it was very fascinating that when I was at the Springfield show, I saw an F-40 painted for McDonald's. And I was like, wow, that's cool. I could run that on my brother's railroad.
Yes. And so it begins.
Yes. Thankfully, no.
Well,
I control
we never know.
One never knows. But I did control myself.
Yes. Oxycontin's a hell of a drug, Jim Lincoln. Be careful.
Yes, it is.
Careful. So
drugs are not necessary.
Yes. Who knows? Anyway, moving on from this topic. Jim, always a pleasure chatting. I'm glad to see you back in the hobby. Please rest up and heal up and, I don't know. I'm always sensitive to people that have surgeries and these kind of things. So hopefully you'll be fighting fit and off the Oxycontin in some time in the foreseeable future. And who knows what direction you will take the hobby.
Well, actually, hopefully next weekend I'll be hooking up with Terry Terrence.
Ooh, very cool.
And we'll be going to the O-Scale National, which happens to be in Connecticut.
Very cool.
So
pass my regards to Terry. Please do.
I will. I said that I was concerned that I might not be able to drive 10 days after an operation. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'll come down, I'll pick you up, and I'll take you out there.
Terry Terrence is just, I mean, when I think of people in this hobby that are just like salt of the earth people, I mean, a lot of them have participated in Model Rail Radio. I reflect on Jim Gore and a variety of other folk, but Terry Terrence, just inspirational. I mean, inspirational within this hobby, and has just touched so many people. And when I think of all the rise of N-scale 3D laser printing, I mean, that occurred in the room beneath me at Show 100. Terry Terrence talking to a bunch of N-scalers. They all went away and started creating. And the world has never been the same. So.
Very cool. And I will tell you this one little piece of information, just to, I don't know if this means anything or not, but I don't have very much. So I was not overly concerned about having the operation, but you always have to be.
Of course.
So, I just wrote some stuff out, and I said, I want the dogs to go to so-and-so, and I want this to happen and this to happen. And just so you know, had anything happened, I was giving you the chocolate.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, only because I know even if you couldn't use it, you'd find a good home for
Oh,
it.
most definitely, Jim Lincoln. Well, I
So-
am humbled by that.
No, I said
And
now.
I won't mention this to my wife because we both watch Forensic Files, and if you turn up dead in a few days, it's not going to look good for me. But moving on from that, I am humbled, Jim Lincoln. Thank you very much.
I just figured I'd tell you. I'm like, who the heck am I going to give that to? Tom. Tom can use a layout, and even if he can't, I'm sure he can find a good place
So
for it.
let's put it another way. Are you using the chocolate currently?
No.
Are you looking to get rid of it?
No.
Okay. Well,
Why?
we'll leave this conversation there. I'm looking at the space. I finally, after years of migrating my podcasting room and all this other stuff, my wife's sisters came and stayed. One stayed in the Jim Lincoln suite and one stayed in my podcasting room. And I'm just thinking this room needs a layout. My wife wants to put in a desk and a printer and a bunch of other stuff. And I thought, no, this room needs a layout, darn it. I mean, this hobby thing. So, yeah, I'm looking. You probably have better feelers associated with folks that might be, and in fact, listeners, who am I talking to here, will probably have better feelers associated with folks that are looking to get rid of shelf layouts and this kind of stuff. But that's what I'm looking for currently. Ideally, a slightly loved layout of a certain size, not huge, easily transportable. I will cover all FedEx, DHL, UPS, all that kind of stuff. So don't worry about that. But feel free to, listeners, pitch me any layouts that you're looking to get rid of.
Well, Tom, the one thing I will say about the chocolate is you would need to scenic it, but it runs. It's 100% operational.
Yes.
So if you're interested, we'll chat offline.
It's an N-scale layout, though, right?
It's N-scale. It's 10 by 7.
Alas. Well, 10 by 7 is the right size, but N-scale, I'm just getting out of that thing. So I'm looking more for HO, ON30, O-scale at a pinch. So folks that might have something like that out there, I do periodically being roughly once a week, look on eBay associated with layouts. And I do, there's a crew in, I think, Stockton, which is a few towns over, that makes amazingly detailed shelf layouts. And I've thought about commissioning something from them, particularly an aquamarine, like a small aquamarine switcher. I think I'd have a lot of time for, and they do beautiful water work, and particularly that kind of stuff that Ed Traxler is known for as well, that kind of murky industrial water, which I just really love. So, yeah, but anyway, I'm just putting it out there. Listeners to Model Rail Radio, you know who you are. It doesn't have to be the chocolate. It doesn't have to be bequeathed to me. I can work things out. Otherwise, Jim, I'm not going to mention this to my wife. She's not going to have any fun with this, but I'm thankful that you think of me in your will. And I don't
Such
know.
as it is.
I've got a few ninja pajamas I could probably bequeath to you. I'll have a think about what I bequeath to you.
Those have come out on occasion.
Very good.
That's a great statement.
Right. Ron Kleiss is only on for half an hour. I've got to get to him. Any excuse to get off Jim Lincoln on Oxycontin. Always a pleasure, Jim. You know what to do. Stay on the line if anything comes up.
Roger.
Very good. I'd like to welcome back on Ron Kleiss. As noted in the break, it has been an inordinately long time since we've had a chance to chat, Ron. I am living vicariously through your garden update. I have this notion of Kleiss Manor now. You've taken so many long-range shots where the house is just in the distance and there's all these rolling gardens that I'm just imagining, because this is a serious thing. September 2018, you and I are going to be meeting. I'm hoping to meet the family. I'm hoping to see your layout. I'm hoping to do a variety of things because I am coming to talk as some kind of authority. We'll cross that bridge when you meet me, associated with this podcasting thing. And I am really looking forward to getting to the East Coast. It's been a long time coming, but I'm really looking forward to meeting you and the family. In terms of model railroading, am I right? Has there not really been a lot going on with the layout as you've been working on the garden? What's been going on?
Yeah, you're right. A lot of stuff out in the garden, doing a lot of projects. But the layout, the main layout that most people are aware of, the narrow gauge, I haven't done much with that one because a shiny little sparkly thing called Canal Street caught my eye. And I've been doing model railroading, but it's a totally different genre. It's actually a switching layout that I was turned on to by Ralph Heiss. And he just happened to put up one little blurb about this Canal Street in Philadelphia. And I was looking at it. I've always enjoyed Philadelphia. You know, I was born there. I hung out there as a teenager and young 20-year-old and stuff, and always like the cobblestone streets, and I would always catch. You could see the trolley tracks in the road. Still, it's not. Some of it's used, some of it's not. But then he showed me this link to this Canal Street branch, basically of the Pennsylvania Railroad. It's actually the Philadelphia Beltline Railroad. So I started looking into it. I was like, wow, this is really cool. It's barely a quarter mile long, just under a quarter mile long, but it has 12 different industries on it, and every industry has a different commodity going to it. So I did the chocolate thing that James Lincoln there did, and I took the liberty of using the plotter printer at my work, and I found this Sanborn map from 1916 that had all the tracks in it, had everything on there. They did great surveying back then, because when I printed it out and laid it out, it matched almost exactly to the current 2017 Google Maps that are out there. I'm doing it in a modular style. I'm sort of like Fremo type, but it's going to be, I guess it would be more of the sectional style type of layout.
Certainly.
Where just the end plate, like one of the end plates on one end, I'll have that as a connection to a Fremo type style. But the rest of it, it'll only be able to set up in one way, because I'm doing it one for one, chocolate style. It's going to be exactly the way the tracks are. The buildings are going to be built the way they exactly are. This shiny thing really caught my eye. So the narrow gauge is a little bit on the back burner.
So where have you set this thing up? Is it in your woodshop room, or where are you actually setting it up?
Yep, it's in the basement. I put it on my workbench, and I'll do 2 sections at a time and make sure they're all lined up, and I got alignment pins, and I have yet to start building legs. I only have 3 sections. Eventually it's going to be probably 5 sections in total. So I have 2 more sections to build. And then plus the little transition plate to Fremo at the end. But just as a proof of concept, I wanted to get these 3 sections because the main section has a runaround, and it has I think that has 3 industries just on the first section. And I built a section on each direction so I can have some room to run around, and each one of those sections has 1, 2, 3, 5 more industries on that. So I'm pretty excited about it. There's a lot of new techniques that I'm starting to try and figure out. Just tonight, a couple hours ago, I finished my first single point turnout. I've never done that. It was a little bit of a challenge. I looked at pictures. I looked at stuff online. I basically took the number 6 fast tracks jigs that I have, and I modified it and ended up building. It's kind of a weird configuration with the street running and stuff, because they try and minimize, I guess, the moving parts in the street, so they only have one moving point, and it works. One little hiccup that I have is because the one moving point has beveled edges on both sides. It doesn't have a lot of meat to it. The base kind of gets filed away. So I'm thinking of kind of hollowing out one of the guardrails, I guess. What's happening is the throw bar is only getting soldered to the one point. So that's the only strength it has is on that one point. And since I filed it down so thin, there is no room for solder to kind of grab on and hold on. It works great until the throw bar decides to say, I'm done, and pops off.
Yes. Interesting. You sound like you're having a lot of fun, Ron. I'm looking forward to seeing you September next year. I'm looking forward to getting potentially... I mean, you've obviously got so many folks in your area. I'm interested in doing some serious G-scale stuff as well, which I know is
you're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to be overwhelmed with the amount of people in this area.
Yes. I've already promised Brandon DiCamello and my other podcast, Attic Aficionados, that I'll run a D&D game for him down in just outside of Philadelphia. So I'm going to be buying time. My anticipation is to take 2 weeks off work and come in very seriously and just hit up a bunch of layouts and get in contact with a bunch of people. So really looking forward to it. And I'm
enjoying your other podcast. I think Brandon's actually right down in the same area Ralph de Blasi, so you might get to see Grumpy Ralph there.
Believe me, the whole hotbed, I think, is the technical term. Hotbed of model railroaders and just generally eccentric folk. And obviously Brandon ticks a few of those boxes too. So really looking forward to getting down there. Unfortunately, we didn't get to your question associated with G.I. Joe. I think we're going to do a G.I. Joe specific show and cover that in great detail because I'm a complete novice associated with that. But no, I'm always pleased to see work of any description coming out of Kleist Manor, and certainly what I've seen recently has been very, very interesting. I love the use of large format printers, actually. I think that's the one element that's been missing from the hobby, and obviously, as you said, Jim Lincoln started the trend associated with the initial chocolate printing. But yeah, large format printers should really be utilized wherever possible. It
comes in really handy. I mean, instead of sitting there doing a bunch of 8.5 by 11s and taping them together and hoping they're lined up, if you can get your CAD drawing sent, even if I think like Staples or Office Max or something like that, one of those printing shops, as long as you get it properly scaled, it's amazing what a 42-inch wide swath of track looks like.
Oh, yeah.
And when you just lay this thing down, it makes it really handy. And if you can do it in color, all the better.
Most definitely. Most definitely. And if you can use work off the supplies, even better.
I'm just cleaning out the printer heads.
Of course.
That's all I'm doing.
As you have to with these kind of printers. It's a requirement. Yes. Definitely.
So
definitely.
When I'm done with that, I can print up a nice, crisp, clean blueprint for work.
Exactly. Most definitely. Ron, you as you listen in, you haven't been on the show for a while. Any topics that we've come up with? Anything that's piqued your interest that you'd like us to talk about more?
Not really. Now that I'm getting the street running, the trolley stuff is really catching my eye. I'm not doing any overhead. There's no overhead electrical wire, and trolleys weren't run on this line. But just the trackage really fascinates me. It's a little bit sharp for some of the radius that trolleys have, but I've always enjoyed the trolley stuff. I get my fix when I go over to my friend Tom Piccirillo's house. He has his trolley line, and but that's probably another little shiny thing that'll eventually catch my eye.
Yeah. Well, when I look at the garden, I'm thinking G-Scale is somewhere in your future. I'm not sure where, but I'm sure it's coming.
So many people talk to me about that. They see pictures and like, where's the garden railroad going to be? Where's the garden railroad? And I said, just let me get my tomatoes growing.
Yeah.
I've had very poor weather for tomatoes this year. And my peppers, cold. It was cold and rainy. And we had about 4 days of hot weather. And within those 4 days, my plants have doubled in size at least.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no,
because
that's what
all of a sudden they're like, holy cow.
Well, they put down roots, right? Even through the bad weather, they're putting down roots. Roots don't stop growing. So as soon as they get some sun, they just shoot up. Yeah, I have fruiting tomatoes currently. Hopefully they'll redden. I bought early ripening varieties this year because the real problem I have is that they just get woody and then, the fruit is reduced. So I went for fast fruiting varieties, and these things are giants. I mean, I have tomato cages that are clearly way too small for these things. They're kind of extending 3-4 feet above the cages. So anyway, you live and learn, but you get delicious tomatoes some of the time. So always a pleasure chatting, right?
I'm hoping this year. Great chatting you.
And you know what, the way we do things, please stay on the line. And if anything comes up, you know what to do.
Yep, I'm going to hang out for a little bit longer. Thanks, Tom.
Terrific. Talk to you soon. Take care. I'd like to welcome on Brad Howard. Brad, as this is the first time you're calling into Model Rail Radio, would you like to introduce your model railroading interests?
Yeah, I got an HO scale layout. I'm just starting up, actually, with the hobby. I just started the beginning of this year.
So, when you came on the call, you had the video running in the background, and you look like you have a pretty established layout already in, what, six months? Who inspired your bench work and stuff? I mean, your bench work was pretty flawless, at least from 3 feet away.
Just some YouTube videos and things like that. Just been watching YouTube and spending a lot of time on that.
Interesting.
Doing research and stuff.
So, could you introduce your layout? What are you actually modeling? What area, what kind of stuff are you modeling?
It's mostly freelance right now. I'm still trying to work out what I want to do, actually. I just had to get something up and get some trains running, and I got a helix and I started, so... I
mean, I guess that's what I saw, basically, in the background when you had the video running. So, do you have a particular era that you're thinking about?
Modern day.
Okay, interesting. And in terms of the space that you have available, how big will the layout be?
How big I want it to be, or how big my wife wants it to be?
Let's start with how big you want it to be, and then let's talk about the realistic constraints that might be applied.
Well, the current layout room I got right now is it's about 11 by 14.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just cleaned some more of the basement out, and she actually said I might be able to extend it a little bit. So I'm going to try to take as much as I can, if you know what I mean.
Interesting. So is the current layout room on the basement level, or would it be a movement down to the basement?
No, it's currently in the basement.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you'd expand from the room into the remaining parts of the basement. Interesting.
Yeah.
And how big would that expand to if you had your full trackage rights?
Yeah, that's good. Probably another 10 by 14 feet, maybe.
Okay, good.
Kind of around in an L shape. But...
Interesting. So you could get some decent operating. You could get a crew down there and do some interesting stuff.
Yeah, hopefully I could maybe get a crew about 4 to 6 people if I can do it. It's a long-term process, though, as it is.
In terms of the part of the world that you're in, do you want to disclose that? Do you have folks around you or this kind of stuff?
I'm, as you would say, a lone wolf, as I just started. I'm still trying to, get together with some people. But I'm in, basically the Kansas City metro area.
Oh my goodness. You are in the second largest epicenter for model railroaders in the US. So just by putting this out on Model Rail Radio, we had a fellow who came from this part of the world, what was it, Seth Arnold? And he moved to your part of the world, and basically every night was Model Rail filled, having just come on the show. So you've got like the head publisher of the NMRA, a bunch of folk in your part of the world that have just world-class layouts. So your time may be filled now with Model Railroad.
Well, I can only hope so. Depends on what my wife likes to say. But...
Well, yes. They tend to be rather friendly gentlemen, and, you know, they have techniques in order to make wives change their minds in very curious fashions, as has happened with my wife periodically. So don't underestimate the power of persuasion that these model railroad folk will have. But no, you are in a substantial hub for model rail folk, and in fact people who even come into town, you know, there are many operating layouts in your area. So you may not be lone wolf for much longer. In terms of doing things like joining the NMRA or at least going to local meets or this kind of stuff, have you done anything like that yet?
I have not. I've been busy with, work and family, and then every little bit I just try to work on this and spare money. But I'm interested to go try things out and meet some people. So
Stephen Priest is the gentleman's name who's the main editor. I think for a long period of time I was friends with his wife on Facebook. There are a number of other folk in that area that have established layouts. I mean, really, it's just a matter of you picking what kind of stuff interests you more than anything, because that area is, like I say, a major hub, and certainly we have a number of listeners in the area as well. So
yeah.
In terms of the stuff, I mean, you talked about wanting to get people there for operations. In terms of actually assistance with, like, building the layout and this kind of stuff, are you looking for that kind of help as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd always like some help. It's just trying to gather some more resources to get it together.
Certainly. You're part of the Facebook group, I'm assuming, the Model Rail Radio Facebook group?
I am.
So I will contact Seth Arnold, who's still, I think he's in our part of the world now. He lives in Livermore, California. But he certainly has all the old names and email addresses and stuff when he lived in your part of the world. So I'll get in contact with him and put him in contact with you, and you'll be a lone wolf no more. Maybe you'll try being a lone wolf, I don't know. But my view is, in your part of the world, you've got too many resources to learn from. And in particular, many, like, long-term established operating layouts, and many people that are on their, 5th, 6th, 7th layout. And also in terms of regional techniques, I mean, your benchwork looks pretty good from, like I say, 3 feet away. But in terms of people that have, like, regional knowledge of, various spline techniques and these kind of things, I think you'll be spoilt for choice. So I'll put you in contact with Seth Arnold, and he'll put you in contact with all the locals. Very interesting. Very interesting. And then, obviously, you will, just through force of people, your basement will be neatly filled in a very short order of time. So you're modelling modern. you don't have a particular prototype yet, but what kind of, you obviously like operations in some sense, right?
Yes, that's kind of what I actually like, some operations and moving things around the yards and different things.
What
So-
kind of industries are you looking at putting on the layout?
a coal mine and some just industries around my main yard here. And then I was going to do some other things, and then I got maybe this new expansion. So I've been thinking on maybe some stuff around like a seaport or something.
That'd be cool.
So yeah, I'm just kind of thinking on what I can do.
So, as you listen to Model Rail Radio, what kind of stuff could we be talking about that we're not covering currently? What kind of stuff would interest you?
Well, I actually just about a month ago maybe found you on the podcast, so I'm still trying to catch up with all the past. I actually started with show 99 and have just today actually caught up with your last one. So, and then I have to go back and start over. So,
Yes.
but, everything seems good. I'm trying to learn as much as I can. So, with on your podcast, and then obviously with YouTube and everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, John Garrity in the chat, who is a coal mine expert, said that coal mines can eat up a lot of real estate. They don't have to, though. I think if you're dedicating to a coal mine, then obviously you can take up a substantial portion of the layout. But a lot of people have, like, coal mine elements on their layout as well. So it can be the case that way, John Garrity, but really everyone has a choice. So, Brad, I'm really interested in connecting you with Seth. I think that would provide a lot of resources immediately for you. And thank you very much for calling in today and introducing your ideas and your location and your layout, because I think that will certainly assist connecting folks with you as well.
Well, thank you a lot, Tom. Appreciate it.
I'd like to welcome back on a gentleman who, at this time of year, coming towards the end of June, it reminds me, this is the Jim Gifford and Roz time of year associated when they came to stay with us. Podcasting room and the Jim Lincoln suite are both ready once again for guests, as they were when you came through. That trip, Jim, goes down in the annals of model rail radio and just model rail podcasting in general as being one of the most extraordinary tours ever undertaken. A year after, or nearly a year after when you first departed for this, can you talk a little bit about how your life changed having done that tour?
I guess the first thing was it took me 6 or 8 weeks to get over it. No, we had an absolutely fabulous time. I guess some of the biggest lessons were how the clubs organise themselves.
Oh, yeah.
So that they've got a sustainable future in terms of locations and buildings.
Certainly.
You know, we've talked to a few back here that have been in places and had to move half a dozen times in the last 15 years. And,
Oh, yeah.
and I think they're starting to get the idea of make it a community service and come to an agreement with your local government. And, certainly the Sama Club here in Adelaide has just done that a couple of years back. So perhaps they've learned something from our brethren across the other side of the world. But no, you know, we're starting to reflect on, God, it's been a year already.
Yeah.
And, this all the people coming on tonight, you know, Ron and Jim, Mike Slater, you know, we all caught up during that trip and, you know, made some really great friendships that I'm sure are going to continue on over the years.
Certainly. Yeah, Model Rail Radio has just been an amazing means of getting in contact with a bunch of really interesting and friendly people. And I think that's, you know, as the years go on and the podcast editing goes on and, you know, Michelle looks at me periodically and says, this Model Rail Radio thing's still going on. I'm like, yes, it is. It's really about friendships more than anything. I mean, it's an amazing resource to have reached out to so many people and put people in contact, and I'm going to put Brad in contact with Seth and all these kind of things. This network that Model Rail Radio and the other Model Rail Radio podcasts obviously have created, just absolutely untouchable. I mean, I met your son recently as well, you know. It goes in all different directions.
Yes, it certainly does. And, you know, apart from this one, I enjoy listening to your other ones as well. So they're always thought-provoking, and which is good. And I guess things have been a little bit busy down here. You know, I met John and the Prof and a few others at the Narrow Gauge Convention.
How was that?
Which was great. We had a terrific weekend. It was a boys' weekend.
Certainly.
And, the red wine flowed first night
Uh-huh.
and subsequent nights.
Very cool.
But no, the convention was good. Even though we don't model in ON30 or narrow gauge, the techniques and stuff
Certainly.
are pass across scales, and that was great. Managed to get quite a few photos and a few videos, and we had a great train ride on the Bellarine Railway on the Monday. Plus, then I went out to Peters and had a week of playing with Arduino stuff for model railways.
Yes.
And I must say the Arduino platform's considerably easier than the Texas Instrument
Certainly.
Launchpad platform.
Larger community. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's so much stuff you can draw on. There's so many different examples out there. The last week or so, I've just been doing a fast clock based on the CPU clock.
Yep.
And would you believe it? It keeps time lovely. That's which amazed me. I thought that it would go off after a while, but no, ran it for 18 hours, and it was only 1 or 2 seconds different to when it started.
Yes.
So it's amazing. And I've got my remember when we were at Seth Newman's and he had the opening gates and the derail.
Certainly.
I've now got that working on mine, albeit I've got to fit the proper gates on the top instead of the masking tape.
Very good.
Yeah, but that sort of stuff's working now. So
in terms of your crew, we've had on the American Chris Adams. In terms of the Australian Chris Adams, how's this layout going?
Oh, I just finished putting some LED light stripping underneath his top level so we can actually see what the hell's going on in the storage area.
Very good.
we have started ops there, and the first operating session we had a disaster. We had a three-way point that decided to throw one of the closure rails, and ended up we had to take part of the top section off and rip that out and put 2 others in.
Gosh.
But so that's been happening. He's been building some of his cardboard models going from summer to winter. Decided to warp. You'll see some of that in the blog this month because I happened to score some pictures and said, I've got to share this. It was all about stiffening it properly,
Yes. Yes.
So it's interesting, in the summer they're nice and flat, in the winter they're curled up.
Yes. Welcome to South Australian weather. Yes.
Yes. Well, you're sweltering and we were 8 degrees this morning.
Yes.
So that's Celsius.
Certainly.
Which is
certainly.
About.
And how about Roz? What's happened? I mean, obviously, in terms of reinvigoration in the hobby, the trip last year, Roz not necessarily was in the dumps when she came out, but, obviously Pam had passed. The hobby was getting a little long in the tooth for her in a variety of different fashions. And I could see just in the time here, completely re-energized, and then, additional 2 months of meeting people. What's happening with Roz?
Well, I achieved my objective. It's actually doing things again now. But hasn't done too much down the hole. We have put in a crossover thing with protection on each side so that, you're not going to have a cornfield meet in the side of the train. So done that for her. But we'd still go to her place probably about every 4 weeks and have a modelling night on a Monday night. We're doing a lot more operating this year. I'm having 1 session a month. We're going up to Wayne's in Coromandel Valley once a month.
Cool.
We're going to Chris's. We're going to and Don, the big tall guy that was in Orient Express that I was talking to when you were talking to the boss.
Certainly.
He's now come back and become active, and as for next month, that's another layout we're going to be going for ops sessions. So a lot more ops this year.
Right.
And we're all learning because people have got different systems and are in different stages of implementing things like car cards and stuff. So it's really interesting. The timetable and train order with car cards is running to the clock. It's certainly to learn it. It's quite challenging, but once people initially hate the clock, but in actual fact, the clock ends up being your friend.
Certainly.
because if everything falls over, they'd stop the clock.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
But certainly the amount of technical problems on each of the layouts has been reducing dramatically. So
good.
you know, as we've done the ops and you know, we have to play with a few things. You always get those little areas that cause particular problems. And it's just a case of spending a few hours on someone's layout with those that have got the skills to tissy it.
Amen.
Yep. So should be good.
Very good, Jim. Very good. Well, you know what to do. Please stay on the call. If anything comes up, we'll chat again.
Yep.
But real pleasure catching up. And please pass on my regards to all your crew.
Yes, I will do that. And I just need Jim Lincoln to rattle Terry Terrence's cage and to remind him that the convention's going to be over and to get back and do his microprocessor stuff that he's
Alas. Retirement has not been good for Terry Terrence in terms of doing stuff, right?
I will try to do that.
Yeah, I know you'll rattle his cage for me, Jim.
That's all Jim does, right? He's just a cage rattler. That's
yeah, lovely.
Amen. Yes, amen.
All right, and I forgot to mention Mike earlier too. It was nice to catch up with Mike and see him on the call again too. So.
Most definitely.
All right, I'll see you on the side.
Take care. I'd like to welcome back on Martin Jenkins. Martin, I still smile when I think of your first call when you introduced yourself as a lone wolf modeler. We've since had video evidence. Well, in fact, we've had a lot of evidence that this clearly wasn't the case. And associated with your area, the video that you posted, was it the Rockhampton meet? The Rockhampton train show that you went to?
The Bundaberg train show.
Was it Bundaberg or Toowoomba? It was Toowoomba.
Well, there's Bundaberg, Toowoomba and Brisbane on there at the moment.
In terms of the Toowoomba train show, I go to train shows here, and they're, not to put too fine a point on it, they're rather sombre affairs. They're almost like funerals. Well, they are funerals. They're funerals for train sets that are overpriced, being oversold, and are kind of pushed to people as they first walk in. Sure, there are layouts, but there's nothing like what you showed. Just to say, let's just stick with Toowoomba. Because I watched that video 3 times and passed it on to a variety of folk, just to point out some of the things that are lacking in the local train show community. Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, the beauty that I liked associated with the Toowoomba video is it wasn't just people such as yourself who were familiar with the various players in the area, but actually the kids and the integration of people with controllers in their hands and all the real basics that are just sadly lacking from so many train shows. Just absolutely perfectly done.
Yes, we do have up in Queensland here a number of modelers that have U-drive sections of their own layouts. And that'd probably be about 8 or 9 of them at each show. I mean, the idea of going to shows is to promote the hobby and try and get kids interested in it. That's why we use, on our club layout, we use Raspberry Pis and iPads to drive the layout. We don't actually use any DCC system or any computer, such as a Windows or a Macintosh machine. It's all done with a Raspberry Pi 3 and a little booster. But that's one of the things we've tried to do in the NMRA up here is try and promote the hobby and have integration with the public.
It is so important and it's so missing in so many shows that when I saw it, I thought... My frustration is that you can say these things to people and they can go, yeah, but it never worked. Things will break down. People will get bored. People can't control trains. This whole concept of them moving in directions and at speeds far too advanced for the general public. I mean, there's all this kind of nonsense that people say associated with these things. And then I see a show such as the Toowoomba one, and people are doing it. They've got kids, 6, 7-year-old kids, driving trains, having a great time, understanding the hobby, the kinetics of the hobby in a very intimate way, and clearly bringing up another generation of folk that are going to be model railroaders. So, I mean, hats off to you. In terms of your local NMRA group, if they can get this back to the national here in the US, if this could be something that can be used in, like, regional NMRAs over here, and also... I think the fundamentals of the train shows here are just very, very strange. I was in San Diego with my wife about 2 months ago now, And we went to the San Diego layout. I'm not sure of its name, but it's in a historic area, and everyone says, "Oh, this is the forefront of model railroading." And certainly when Jim and Roz were here, they went down to San Diego and they went to that layout as well. Every possible mistake associated with interacting with the general public was made. You kind of spat out at a gift shop with really overpriced, dusty products, no one to talk to. It's just like a really sterile environment. I'm the host of Model Rail Radio, damn it. I mean, if anyone's going to talk trains, and, it's just such a surreal, big plexiglass stuff, distance between you and the trains, people operating, scurrying away, no one makes eye contact, no one talks with you. They're almost like some hermit-like monks that, just exist in this environment. I was really frustrated by this experience because I've heard a lot of really positive things associated with this particular layout, but I had no exposure to that just as a general punter coming one day. And my view is that everything that you guys are doing, you need to bottle, you need to ship internationally, you need to be like a flag. I mean, I think that YouTube video, just of Toowoomba, should be compulsory viewing for anyone. I mean, we've got Jim Gore running for national for the NMRA. People just need to get in the mindset that it's not that these things would be problems or these things don't work out, that they're actually folk such as yourselves that are doing this stuff now, and you can see immediately that it's having a really positive, not just with regards to the punters, but also with regards to the people that are building layouts, thinking about this is going to be an active participation thing. So thank you very much for posting those videos and illustrating that this thing can be done and should be done. And having seen that, like I said, when you said you were going to come on tonight, I said, I've got a lot to talk to you about. And this is the main thing, because I was thoroughly impressed with what I saw. And I thought this has got to be the blueprint for every train show in terms of getting the younger folk involved, accessing, putting the controllers in their hands and introducing them to the hobby in a really intimate and satisfying way, which they can take away for the remainder of their life. So thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Not a problem. Thank you. But one of the things that we do here at the NMRA in Australia is we do actually have a kids program, which we run at some train shows. It's mainly been done down in New South Wales, but we're going to start doing it up here in Queensland. It's basically the kids can come along, sit down at a table. You've got all the materials there to scenic a little 6x4 diorama. So they put some trees on there, they lay some foliage, then they leave it there to cure, and then before they go home, they come back and pick it up.
Very important.
And that is a really beneficial thing to the hobby. I mean, it just shows them how easy it is to do a piece of scenery. If you look on the NMRA Australia website, there's actually a link there with videos and all the directions. So any other NMRA region or any other club, for that matter, could go in there if they decided to do something like this. The little diorama that they make was actually designed by Jeff Knott, who has done quite a few spectacular layouts over the years. But, that's always a big success at the train shows, is the kids' clinics.
Yes, I can't say enough for the work that you guys are doing. And I think also the affability of the people that were showing. I mean, this is the other part. It's not just associated with getting controllers in the public's hands. It's associated with a friendliness and approachability. I mean, going to this club in San Diego, standoffish isn't even the word, just completely and utterly unapproachable. No one making eye contact, no one doing anything like this. And to see your video, and I mean, obviously you're a known personality in the hobby in your area, so I mean, some of that comes through the video as well. But just to get a sense that the folks are understanding, and we talked to folks in the UK as well. I mean, obviously we talked to Martin Coombs and his crew about the importance of being approachable in a show context to introduce people to the hobby. I mean, could you talk a little bit about that?
Exactly. Well, a lot of the shows that we do here, like in Australia, a lot of the NMRA guys and the guys I'm involved with, we don't use fencing or anything in front of layouts. So first of all, the people can come right up to the layout and have a look. In fact, the layout that I have sits on those plastic blow mold tables. So it's only 3 foot off the floor. And we get comments all the time from parents that, oh, isn't it great that there's a layout at the kid's height? Now, it's detailed just as finely as some of the other layouts. It's just that it's down low so the kids can see it.
Certainly.
And then, of course, when we go to shows, we have a roster where we've got at least 2 members out the front who can chat to the public and hand out flyers and on the club and on the NMRA, and it's been quite successful. The NMRA in Queensland, the division I look after, we've got 223 members, and that's the largest division in Australia. So we're even beating New South Wales at the moment. So
very good.
State of origin lives on.
Yeah, well, I mean, but people move to Queensland at a particular point as well, so I mean that makes some sense. And folks in New South Wales are obviously trying desperately to earn a crust and survive. So clearly, yeah, I understand where you're coming from with that particular perspective. One of the things that I really enjoyed with our initial conversation was associated with your Melbourne layout and talking about just the ideas behind the Melbourne layout. And it's something that I've talked to a number of people about and pointed them to the podcast specifically. What is going on with that currently?
Okay, we've just about finished laying all the track in the form-up yard and the underground city loop. It's turned out a bit bigger than I expected. It's got 23 tortoise point motors in there, and there's 20 different isolation blocks.
Gosh.
So it's I'm just doing the middle of the wiring for it at the moment, but we hope to have that. We hope to have that all completed by the end of next month. And then we're going to have probably about 2 months worth of running on it before we put the next deck on and start on the scenic side of it. But I've been collecting kits and buildings and some ideas about making some iconic buildings out of Melbourne, like Transport House and a few others. So, there's going to be quite a bit of kit bashing and scratch building to do those. And, I'm just collecting photos, basically. As I said to the other 2 guys that are helping me build it, I said, I don't want to see a park. I don't want to see a tree. I don't want to see any bush. This is all dirty 1980s inner city Melbourne. That's the idea behind it. I said there's plenty of layouts out there who've got lovely country scenes and country stations and the likes. I said, I want to do something completely different.
There are so many. I mean, when I had you on, I was thinking of Malcolm. There are a bunch of films. There's one called Death in something that has... I'm useless on film names and stuff off the top of my head, but so many of that period of time, quite famous films that are known outside of Australia are filmed in Melbourne at that period of time. So
Malcolm's brilliant.
Malcolm is I would start with that, particularly in terms of the industrial dankness, for want of a better term. Malcolm characterises that perfectly. But there are a bunch of... Death in Brunswick, I think, is the one I was thinking of. I'm trying to think of other films in that period that show... it's such a beautiful... The use of corrugated iron in semi-residential, semi-industrial areas. I mean, it's just a beautiful kind of grit, which I understand you are looking to capture here. And like I say, I thought of 2. There were a bunch of other films that came to me through this period of time because I think the Melbourne film industry really understood it at that period of time. There were... I'm trying to think of some of the other films. But just a number of that thing. Very similar, actually. I mean, not the same, but very similar to industrial London in terms of like so many film location kind of iconic bits and pieces that can be put together.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Exactly.
Wonderful
I'm trying to capture the industrial area of South Melbourne. I'm going to do a few... I've got some photos there of old factories that used to be there, which is now, of course, where the casino and convention centre is built and the like. So, but it's a work in progress.
Very good. Very good. Well, please keep me updated. I'm always interested in corrugated iron techniques, in particular weathering corrugated iron effectively. And I think the Australian weathering techniques, particularly associated with kind of matted rust effects and these kind of things.
Yes.
I can see a lot of those being utilised heavily here. And as you say, the dirty dustiness of Melbourne in that period of time, really, there was I'm just thinking of films here because there were just so many iconic films through that period that captured so many of those elements.
Yeah, we actually got, when we were at Toowoomba, I picked up some of those Ossian Falcons. And they were XDs, so they're for the right era. So the next thing is now we're going to make a mould, and we're going to cast about 500 of them for the Ford factory.
Oh yeah.
So yes, that's one of the projects that one of the guys are working on. So.
And in terms of rail link, I mean, the Ford factory had some rail operations associated with it, I'm assuming.
Yes, yeah. They used to ship out, and I actually did my apprenticeship at the Nissan factory, or as the Americans would say, Nissan.
Yes.
But back then it was called Datsun.
Of course.
And in those days, we used to actually make all the Volvos there, all the 244 series Volvos. So I've got a whole bunch of those because they used to get shipped out on rail as well. So we've got a whole bunch of those that we've been casting. From weaking models and machining out and then painting, and we should have a whole about 6 cars, 6 rail stacks full of those.
Who makes a Datsun?
There's some weaking models that make a Datsun 280Z and a few others.
Very
but
nice.
I've been getting the Opel. Weaking also made an Opel. I think it was called a Cadet, and it looks just like a Gemini of that era.
Okay, interesting.
So we've got a heap of those that we've done, and the other one they make looks very much like a VL Commodore. So I've got those done up as taxis, police cars. So I'm trying to keep all the vehicles to that era as well. You won't find any modern era cars in there at all.
No way. So that would stick out. That would stick out immediately. So yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Wonderful stuff, Ben. I'm looking forward to seeing when you get to this stage. Obviously, I mean you're in the track laying stage currently, but I think the visuals and the emotive effects are certainly what I'm looking for with this particular lap. And I've recommended it to a number of people that are actually non-model railroaders as well, who all have fond memories of Melbourne at that particular time. So it's an amazing time and era to pick, and I think it's an interesting apex because, as noted, captured in a few films as well. So, yeah,
yes,
very good.
Yes. No, I've actually got to get the old video camera out and do a video on the shed because I haven't done anything on the actual shed itself and the layout. And before we get much further, I should just do a quick video of what it is now. Otherwise, before I know it, we'll be doing scenery stuff and someone will say, oh, you should video this.
Yes. They're remarkably cheap now, actually. Like, video cameras that used to be, $600 are now $150. I bought one recently, which I proceeded to lose and then refind again. And it's amazing, actually, the quality of video cameras that you can get for next to nothing. I guess the cell phone market and what have you, all the component costs came down dramatically. And now, I mean, the one I bought is really just a hollow shell, a kind of hand camera. So, yeah, the availability of this kind of stuff has increased dramatically recently for a reasonable price. So I'm really looking forward to actually seeing this stuff come together, Martin.
We'll get a few together. We'll get the GoPro out. That's what I've been using most of the time. And we'll get something done.
Always a pleasure catching up, Martin. I've only spoken to you once before, but I'm really enjoying the stuff that you're producing. And like I say, if you can get the stuff on the NMRA in your local area back to the national here, and I'd love to see train shows like the one that you showed in Toowoomba. Beautiful.
Well,
stuff.
it's actually funny because I've been the Pacific District Director's position is coming up, and I thought the date for the applications was September, but then I got told it was May, so I've missed out and put an application in. But
next time
we'll give it a go.
Definitely. Well, folks are posting YouTube clips and stuff up of your layout, so always a pleasure chatting, Martin. Please keep doing what you're doing. Please keep posting videos on the Facebook group as well. I really enjoy them. Always a pleasure chatting.
Not a problem. You take care. Bye-bye.
I'd like to welcome back on John Garrity. I was hoping to get the professor on this show, but you're nearly just as good. John Garrity, what's been going on with your model railroading hobby?
Not much apart from recovery from Geelong.
Oh, my goodness. So, in terms of Corrimal, looked splendid. How did it operate?
Pretty good. Mm-hmm. We had some trouble on the Sunday. I jammed up a skip in the tipple cage, which kind of has moved something. So, yes, it would work occasionally, but we couldn't guarantee that we were going to get a skip in and out of the cage. So all Saturday, yes, we were running coal, tipping it, getting skips away, and about second skip Sunday morning, down the hill crunch. What I think we've done, we tightened up an adjustment too much, which previously something would slip and you could get yourself out of trouble. We tightened it up a bit too much and something else has moved, which is, I think, knocked the track alignment out by probably under 0.5 millimetre. And that's enough to cause trouble when you're pulling skips with magnetics.
Of course, yes.
Apart from that, yeah, it worked. Given that it got bounced around for 1,000 k's each way,
Yes.
we did very well.
Very impressive.
We lost one tree in transit on the way down that fell off. Everything else remained attached. Everything started up first go when we fired it up on the Friday evening or afternoon. Jim Gifford had his video camera out and caught us in action during that period. So when that video was shot, we didn't have the ropes run out on the incline, and the tipple house wasn't covering up where the tipper outer was on the tipple deck. But apart from that, yes, it was the incline itself was running and running well. Anyone who has a look at the video might notice that there's a lady counting down the number of skips at the bottom of the hill. The deal is there, you need the fourth skip arriving to nudge a skip forward to trigger the bottom end tip out cycle. So unless you've got 3 waiting, nothing's going to happen at the bottom of the hill. When the fourth one arrives, that's when stuff starts to happen at the bottom of the hill. So Jim actually caught us with, I think, 2 skips at the bottom of the hill. So we'd only just started test running at the time. Apart from that, yes, it was a good weekend.
Very good.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Our crew thoroughly enjoyed it. Dan Pickard and his crew did a magnificent job.
Amazing job, yes. Did you see the model he submitted of the guy there's this little disc model of the guy building a layout?
Yes.
Now that is amazing. To do what he did for the Narrow Gauge Convention and submit that model. Hats off to Dan Pickard.
Yes. He was under a fair bit of time pressure.
Oh, yeah.
They also had organised a very, very good day on Easter Monday out on the Bellarine Peninsula Railway. That was an excellent day out. It starts at Queenscliff and runs back to a town called Drysdale, which originally broad gauge Victorian 5'3", but they've narrowed it to 3'6" for their industrial rolling stock. Originally they were in central Geelong and got moved out to Queenscliff. So they didn't have much option but to narrow the gauge of the tracks. They've done a terrific job on upgrading probably the first half of the run. It's been upgraded with, I think, concrete sleepers in some places and heavier rail. The rest of the run to Drysdale is still on basically the old track on timber sleepers, and all they've done is move the rail across. And it's short rail, lighter rail, so it's a bit bumpier and a bit more atmospheric for a ride.
Certainly. Certainly.
So, yes, it was an excellent weekend. Myself and my wife stayed down and did a few other things later in the week. Martin, you mentioned earlier about the Melbourne area. If you can find the Miss Fisher murder series, a lot of that was shot around industrial Melbourne. It should be around. It was up on Netflix recently. Not sure whether it's still there. The ABC put it together. So it's a 1920s flapper detective. He's got an interesting take on being a detective. If I say much more than that, I'll give the stories away. So
okay, don't do that, John Gary. Don't do that.
A lot of that was shot around in the old industrial areas of Melbourne.
Those that survive.
So
yes.
You wind up with the narrow alleys, the area around the wharfs
Mm-hmm.
in the days of manual wharf labour,
Certainly.
as opposed to container cranes.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's an interesting period piece set in the mid-1920s.
Very good. Very good. John, it is incredibly hot here. I've got a couple more people to get to. Always a pleasure chatting. Please pass on my regards to the professor when you see him. And
the professor will probably be out of action for another couple of weeks at least.
Mm-hmm.
He sends his apologies today.
Not at all. Not at all.
He's tied up with major house renos.
So I anticipated.
Yeah, starting next week.
Very good. Well,
So,
when he's done with that, it's going to be an interesting time to chat with him, I'm sure, because certainly he's never really had a. I mean, he's had enough space for micro layouts, but might have a little bit more space now.
I've got some bad news.
Oh no!
Yeah, Brooklyn 3am is no longer.
What happened?
It was in storage and something big and heavy moved on top of it.
Oh no! Well,
So
that's very sad.
yes, so given it was an all foam core construction,
But it was part of a flight case, right? The actual external thing of it was, or appeared at least, to be relatively tough.
it appeared to be pretty tough. Yes.
Okay, I'll say no more.
When it's hit by something weighing tens of kilograms from a great height, all bets are off.
Alas. Well, that is very sad.
Yeah, he rang up last weekend very disheartened. So it was in storage. It was in what was thought was a reasonably safe place, but something behind it moved and came down on top of it.
Well, that is sad news.
A lot of the cameos are being salvaged.
Good.
It's mainly the high-level bridge and what was under it is broken. It was just too difficult to fix.
Certainly.
So, unfortunately, Brooklyn 3am is no more.
Alas. Well, it will live on in the memories of those of us that saw it operating, and clearly I think it's inspired a number of folks that listen to this podcast, and certainly when I hear, I mean, we've had callers recently that are building Brooklyn layouts of a similar area, obviously slightly larger, but still it inspired a lot of people, and I'm sure whatever comes after it will be a good homage. So, yeah.
I'm sure that there is some stuff happening. Did I mention at the convention that he was running a radio-controlled tractor on timber rails?
Yes, that was associated with what he was designing for the narrow gauge, right? So
Yes.
Yeah.
It ran quite successfully.
Wonderful.
It's now gone to another home. The only drawback is with it, because of the small size of the tractor, it limited the amount of battery that could be shoved in there.
Certainly.
Which limited its duration. So, yes, you'd get about an hour's worth of play out of it. Then it had to go kind of recharge for a while.
Mm.
But if you had more than one tractor...
Very interesting, yes. Well, if anyone can do it, the professor can. So.
Okay, I'll leave you in peace. Thanks very much for the catch-up.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure chatting, John. Pass on my regards to the professor. Condolences associated with Brooklyn.
Okay, will do.
I'd like to welcome back up Dana Driscoll. Dana, when we first spoke, I was under some severe allergies. I have edited the audio associated with that period. I think I come through a little bit coherently. You come through perfectly. Let me first apologise for my condition when we last spoke. But you said you had some updates. You said your club has done some stuff and you wanted to provide a personal update as well. So please fill people in.
Yeah, well, first of all, the Miss Fishers, by the way, down here in Santa Barbara, which is down the coast from you, Tom, we get the Miss Fishers here too, and I think they're great. So enough on that. But today, we're a loose affiliation. We have a somewhat of a club layout by way of Gary Siegel, who has a Louisville and Nashville line model for 1971. And today we managed to host a club from about 100 miles up the coast in San Luis Obispo. They came down, and we had just about as many pilots as we had guests. So it was wonderful. Everybody got to, got some hand holding when they needed it, and we'd step away when they didn't need it. So that was really great. Nice operations, and everything went well. So that was that was a good thing today. It's a nice indoor layout. Certainly hundreds of feet of HO railroad, and it runs very well. So we had a good time. I had to pull out the soldering iron once. I count that as victorious. And so we had a good time. And if people are ever on the West Coast and they get down somewhere between Los Angeles and the Bay Area, Santa Barbara's not such a bad place to hang out for a little while. And Gary's very, very kind and open and giving. And so, I and a couple of the other fellows that live here in town, we just go over and support as best we can. But, there's folks who come from, as far away as Orange County on a regular basis. We operate at least once a month. And it's a good place to go if you like operations. Wonderful. We kind of shift gears. We do a CTC about half the time and a train order the other half the time. And once people get comfortable with train order, they usually really gravitate towards it and like it. So if anybody's sort of anxious about that and they wanted to try it out in a sort of a friendly manner, another reason to come to Santa Barbara.
Wonderful. Yeah. You said you had a personal layout update as well.
Well, I have a little N-scale layout, and it's modeled on something else that starts with an L, LA and SL, and I'm model 1920. If you get up, the LA and SL, for those who don't know, is how the Union Pacific found its way into Los Angeles by way of a little town that they virtually created called Las Vegas. And about 70 miles up from Las Vegas is a junction, if you will, at Mawapa, Nevada. And I've always been fascinated with it. I've been there a number of times, and there's not a whole hell of a lot, but there it is. And it's got a Y, and it's got a nice branch that runs down to what was once the town of St. Thomas, Nevada. And it's no longer there because it was sacrificed to make Lake Mead and the Boulder Dam and such.
Certainly.
But in 1920, it was still there, so it gives me a nice little 21-mile run with a couple of towns. And in 1920, you get all sorts of fun things to do. You've got livestock, and I've got a gypsum mine on the run. All of this is prototypical, or at least as good as I'm capable of making it. But it's small enough that I'm able to model. For instance, Moapa's only got a 2-to-1 compression, so it's fairly workable for somebody wanting to actually think like what it would have been to be in charge of a yard. And it's mostly passenger traffic that flows by and gets in the way, and that's just exactly the way I like it. So it's fun. Tonight, while I was listening in, I was working on a little McKean car that I do, and I managed to get a headlight into it. And an N-scale operating headlights into things it's a challenge for me. It probably isn't for half the guys that are on this call, but for me, I found it victorious. So I counted the day as a very good day.
Very good. Very good. Thanks for the update, Dana. Please stay on the call. I always like it when people call into Model Rail Radio and then call back in the next show with new updates. I think that's really a wonderful thing. So thank you very much for calling in.
All right. Cheers.
I'd like to welcome back on Simon Hill. Simon, it's an absolutely excruciatingly sweltering day here in San Jose. An evening, might I say. But I have to get an update from you because the amount of work that is going on in, do you call it a shed? What do you call the space at the back of your garden? What's the term that you use?
Well, it was my workshop, but now it's my train shed. So
train shed. Okay, very good. The amount of stuff that is going on in your train shed currently is pretty phenomenal. For folks listening in, could you introduce what's going on?
I decided I wanted a train set. I've never had a train set, probably 30 years, because I got involved with lots of club layouts, and then the business come along and commission modelling, and I'd lost the sort of basic reason why I was into model railways, and that was I wanted a train set. So with the business closing down, I decided a bit of reorganisation in the shed. In fact, it took more time to reorganise all the benches, get things out of the way, and then start the bench work. And the plan is it's basically a high-level shelf layout that goes right around the shed. It's got a little bit complicated because, like a lot of things, you try and want to build as much into it as you can. But having drawn the layout out full size, it does fit. But one of the things I did find, although I built the shed myself, was it's slightly not square. And of course, when I drew the layout, I built it square. So I've had to adapt a few bits. And one of the photos shows a board with a little bit of a joggle in it. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. And it's getting back to the hobby. It's grassroots, which is probably the key to this. So, and it's inspired me again after quite a few years.
And I mean, Martin intimated that, something had changed. And obviously you've noted that your business is closed. Your business part of your train shed was substantial. I mean, in terms of all the equipment and all these bits and pieces, were you able to sell it on? Were you able to sell parts of it? I mean, has some of that equipment left the area? What's going on associated with those components of the train shed?
It looked big, but the trouble was there's lots of cabinets with lots of small components in.
Definitely.
And those have been bagged up. They've been put in a loft. And yes, the business is still for sale. And the machinery, what I had to do was lower the benches so it gave me a working height anyway. And most of the machinery has been moved around either under the benches or hidden away. So it's given me a lot of space, although at the moment it looks like a bomb's hitting there because there's wood everywhere. And I have to admit, I'm not the best lover of working in wood. As you know, I much prefer working in metal. But
certainly,
I think today should see another board built, and it only leaves me 2 to make. So it gets me to the stage where I can start the interesting bits, like the track work and the electrics. And actually, talking about the electrics, one of the things I was talking to Neil about was I wanted to minimise the wiring, and Neil came up with an idea, and instead of using micro switches to show an indication of which way the turnouts are set, he said, why don't you use the V, the power that's going into the V, and power it from the positive and negative rails, which works brilliantly. The only trouble was, because I want to have detection, and I rigged up my little test board, I found that every time I switched a point, it showed a detection in that area. So you go one step forward, one step back. But
alas, that's the nature of this hobby, though, right?
Yes, I mean, it's good to have someone like Neil around who's got a very clever way of thinking in electronics. But what I've got to do now is just drop off the detection in the V area, and that will give me less wiring and a positive indication of route set, because it actually shows from the change of polarity instead of a micro switch, which probably is more reliable, I think. But I've seen a couple of people say it's not the best way of going, but I find DCC wiring can get overwhelming if you're not careful, and I think probably a lot of listeners will probably agree to that.
Certainly. So in terms of your crew, recently, 3 weeks ago now, Ken had his open house again?
Yes, it was very good actually. We had the Narrow Gauge Society on the Saturday. I think that was the day you came last year. And they came from all over the country this year. One chap come from Glasgow, one chap come from the Midlands, and they stayed all day, and we entertained them. A very nice day again. And then on the Sunday we had our barbecue, and the Bread Guard group came, and we ran the 16mm garden railway as well, which was very good. And it was nice and warm. The weather was kind to us, which makes a great difference. Yes, it's coming on well. We're getting on well with the first Sunday in June layout. I don't know if you've seen some of Martin's updates.
Oh yeah.
I seem to have been delegated the carver of the foam because it's such a messy job. I arrived with my overalls the other night, and yes, that's coming along well. We're starting on the rotor yard now. We've done the basic framework. Neil's collecting components for it, and he's worked out the best way of going ahead with this now, because it's going to be quite a beast, and we want to keep it a feature of the layout as well, and we're sort of contemplating ways of actually displaying it now to the public. One school of thought is to actually keep it in the basic colour of the layout, which is white, because the key to the whole project is the stock on the layout, and that will show up. But Neil, on his CAD drawing, had shown quite a lot of different colours on the rotor yard, and there's one school of thought that actually perhaps it might be too overwhelming if it's white, but to keep some colour on it. So that's quite interesting.
Certainly.
it's one of those projects that has taken a long time in the discussion stage. But now it's bearing fruits, and it's one of those projects that make you think. A lot of model railways, it tends to be very conventional, and this is very much outside
clearly not
the box.
the same one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
it's nice to have someone like Neil who has just the visual aspect, because, as you say, initial decision, once you actually see it in 3D and see what the effect colour will make to it, you don't want to be too brutalist. At the same point, just by its sheer size, people are going to be drawn to this layout because it's got the carousel. So, yeah, interesting.
Yes, and I think the whole presentation is good. As we've said before, getting away from the black or brown boards with a curtain just hung on the front as an afterthought, to show the whole layout has been conceived with an idea of presentation. I think that's where Martin has got that idea. I can't think too much in the sort of three-dimensional, whereas Martin does.
Yes, certainly.
I'm definitely a two-dimensional man.
Yes. And the layout's named after something, right? The first Sunday in June is a show day for the prototype, right?
Yes, it's probably the day when the railway is at its best, because we've got the very bright greens of the trees. We've got the ends of the spring flowers. And it's one of the weekends where we host the 1940s day. So it gives you a lot of options for sort of interesting people and interesting vehicles to be dotted around the layout.
Yeah.
And it's a good advertising tool for the railway, which is one of the reasons why we're building it, but also because of the challenge. And it's in fact, Bredgar, we're getting on very well.
You're all very familiar with it as well. I mean, I've just edited the audio, so you haven't had a chance to hear my chat with Martin, but that was one of the things that I pointed out to him, was that, you're talking about sleepers and these kind of things. You've actually laid some of the sleepers that you're modelling, so the intimacy that you all have is wonderful. Yeah,
it is. The only trouble we find is because we're there all the operating days and probably one day a week, when it comes to visualising things, do you know, at times we can't visualise it. We know it intimately. We know, every sleeper, every signal, every tree, but when someone says, "What's the width for that sleeper?" we go, "I don't know. We'll have to have a look." And that goes for a lot of the things. Getting the location of the buildings correct is a key issue, and small changes make a whole difference to the visualization, the whole layout. And that's the start. Now we're starting to work on a few buildings. And one of the problems we had was Martin's been looking at most of the stuff to be built in timber. And obtaining the correct size timber is very difficult. Yes, I know. You got Albert Lumber?
Yes, certainly.
The problem is it's the delivery of it, and it's the cost. So Martin's treated himself to a planer finisher, so we can take material down to the correct size.
Yes,
and also that gives us the easy way of producing all the sleepers, because they're quite substantial.
Certainly.
And
now, we discussed last recording exactly that, because, yes, it does sound like, every aspect of this layout sounds, mathematically precise, but at the same point, just in terms of the sleepers alone, what kind of error calculation do you need associated with needing maybe an additional 20 just in case, or maybe an additional 40 just in case? All these kind of things. So.
Absolutely. I always tend to overstock when you do things like that. But I think one of the things we're going to be doing very shortly is we need to get to grips with the detail of the track work. So we've done a test board where we built the rail, but we want to now do some sleepers and get the weathering techniques correct on them, because it's very subtle there. Although people, you sort of think of a brown, black, rusty finish of the sleepers. These definitely aren't. They're a silvery finish with occasional green mould, because most of the area where we're modelling it's under tree cover. So you tend to get a lot of growth on the sleepers, as well as the fencing. A few years ago, we painted all the fencing in the station area black, and within a couple of months, it had gone green. But it's a very subtle green, it's an algae growth.
Yes, certainly. Certainly.
Same as signals, they start out white, but over the season, they tend to, the green creeps up from the ground. And that's little things that will show the layout in a different light. Weathering is the key, I think. Yes, the rolling stock will be very clean, and that's the nature of it. And people say, well, railways tend not to be clean. Well, we polish the engines every time we're down there to make sure that they're presented very well. But the track work, the scenery, the ground cover, that's the key that's going to bring the layout alive.
Simon, it's a pleasure catching up with you. Unfortunately, the elements are attacking me at an alarming rate here, so I'm feeling the need to sign off before I pass out. But it's a pleasure catching up with you. Please pass on my regards to your crew. It's wonderful, actually, to have the opportunity to chat with you in a time frame where we normally don't have a chance to chat. So, no, it's wonderful catching up, and pass on my regards to everyone in your part of the world.
I will, Tom, and it's very hot here. That's why I'm up so early, but I'm going to be down the shed shortly getting on with some work. Thanks
Very
for that.
good. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Cheers, Tom.
Another amazing Model Rail Radio. It's always a pleasure catching up with people, old friends and new friends. That's what Model Rail Radio is all about, folks. And it's been an interesting few weeks, interesting few months. My boss has been off on paternity leave, so work has been filling in for him and doing various other bits and pieces. And yeah, lots of stuff going on, but Model Rail Radio is a cornerstone in my life. The recording, the production, the putting out, and obviously the Facebook group and every aspect of this thing. The social aspect of Model Rail Radio is far greater than any sum of the podcast, etc. So pleasure catching up with folks. Pleasure to chat with the people who called in this evening. And thanks very much to the folks for listening in. Good night.
Night, Tom.
Good night.
Hey, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Night, Tom.